everyone. Okay. I will call to order to Roselle Park Board of Education meeting of May 10th, 2022. This meeting is held in Roselle Park High School Auditorium. It is open session of the Roselle Park Board of Education held under the Open Public Meetings Act of the state of New Jersey. Notice of this meeting was sent to the Star Ledger, local sources, the Home News Tribune, the Borough Clerk, school offices, and the district website. Roll call, please.
President Harms.
Here.
Vice President Colstrom.
Here.
Paul Biamonte.
Here.
Mark Fernandez.
Here.
Z Infante. Dr. Brittany Kirkland.
Here.
Jennifer McCarr. Constance Cantella. We have a quorum.
Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let it be resolved that the Roselle Park Board of Education meeting hereby convenes to the executive session for discussion of the following subjects: attorney-client privilege and personnel. It is anticipated that the executive session will take approximately 60 minutes. The board may take action during public session. The board shall return to public session following executive session at approximately 7 p.m. The minutes of the executive session shall be released to the public when the reason for the executive session no longer exists. Do I have a motion going into executive?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Or any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We are now in executive session. Thank you. Could I have a motion to go back into open?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're back in open session. We are in executive going over attorney-client privilege and personnel matters. Before we get into the public participation, at this time, we'll have the new board member be sworn in. So please come up.
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey. And that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Governments established in the United States and the state. And authority to people self. I, Michael M. Regan. Do solemnly swear. That I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education. And not disqualified as a voter as pursuant to RS 19-4-1. And not disqualified through the conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJSA 18A:12-1. And that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of this office according to the best of my ability. So help me God.
And you can take your seat. Okay. Want to publicly welcome to the board. Keep on hitting it. Again, welcome. At this time, we'll go into the public participation. Anyone wishing to speak on the agenda items only, please come forward, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing none, we'll close the public participation. At this time, we'll turn it over to, this is middle school now? Okay, Ms. Goyce. We're at the high school, so I have to remember what principal. Ms. Goyce, please come up. Ms. Goyce is the principal of the middle school.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very proud to be here to make sure that we highlight some of the accomplishments that the middle school has done this year. Though it was a challenging year, yet again, we're happy to have all of our students achieve all of the academics that they can, but some of them which outstood the year's requirements. I'm going to begin by congratulating one of our 8th graders, Eunices Aravalo, who has been selected as a winner in the 2022 Law Day Toward a More Perfect Union, the Constitution in Times of Change contest. Eunices placed 2nd for her poem in the Poetry Spoken Word Rap contest. Eunices and her parents were invited to a ceremony this past Friday, May 6th, in the courtroom of the Honorable Lisa M. Walsh, which both of them were present with their teacher, Mr. Riggi. In addition, I would like to congratulate the Roselle Park Middle School Technology Student Association, TSA, which we began this year. To start out, we participated in 13 events just to get a feel as we begin to grow our STEM program at the middle school, which is still in its starting stages. And I'm happy to say that out of the 13, we placed in 11 of them. The first place was challenging technology issues, and it was Madison Wilkes and Aiden Ponzio. I believe that these students are here, so I don't know.
Yes. I didn't know.
up.
Okay, so Eunices, we'll start with you. If you are here, you could please come up. Also, we will start with Madison Wilkes and Aiden Ponzio. Please come up for first place.
Eunice Arabello.
Madison and Aiden, participants, they worked together to prepare and deliver a debate-style presentation with participants explaining opposing views of a current technology issue. This year's topic was privacy laws. We also then had first place for the Technology Bowl, Gianna Q, Aiden Ponzio, and Lillian Curry. These participants demonstrated their ability to use the technical design process to solve an engineering design problem on site and present a team solution in a portfolio at a conference. Our second place for digital photography was Vania Castillo. Vania participated producing a digital portfolio addressing an annual theme. Semifinalists participated in a time challenge and demonstrated competency, their knowledge of digital photography in a presentation and an interview. Second place, medical technology, Sanaya Bashi and Sadie Lavash. Participants conducted research on a contemporary medical technology issue of their choosing, documented their research within a display and a design prototype depicting a medical technology solution. Semifinalists participated in a presentation. They designed a prototype for software to protect privacy laws for genetic information. Another second place winner for children's stories, Alyssa Glabaki and Mia Ramos. Participants created an illustrated children's story that will incorporate educational and social values. The story may be written in a genre of their choice and must address the annual theme. Examples are fables, adventures, nonfiction, fiction, and fairy tales. Alyssa and Mia wrote a book about a trip to a science center. Another second place, career preparation, Madison Wilkes. Participants in this conducted research on a selected technology-related career according to a theme posted on the TSA website and used their knowledge to prepare a letter of introduction and chronological skills resume. Semifinalists participated in a mock interview. Madison took the role for marketing. I don't believe Madison is here. No. And second place for forensic technology was Sadie Lavash. Participants take a written test of basic forensic science theory to qualify as semifinalists. Semifinalists participate in a skills demonstration on site. Before I go on to the next honorees, I just wanted to say that, as you can see, this was the beginning, and they shown us what the capabilities of our middle school students and the students of Roselle Park could do. So congratulations and thank you very, very much. The next two students, the two more students, is 8th grade students who enter the Young Writers of Union County Poetry Contest. Miriam Saman placed first and Maite Soriano placed second. Both Miriam and Maite and their families were invited or are invited to the Union County Board of County Commissioners meeting on Thursday, May 12, 2022, to accept their awards. Congratulations to all the middle school students. You did an outstanding job.
Just want to say congratulations to all the students. Great job. Keep up the good work. At this point here, we'll move into committee reports. Do we have any?
Yes, Chairman. I'd like to make
Yeah, after this.
just give a quick update on grounds and facilities at a few of the schools. The field lights over at the high school, that project's supposed to begin in early July and be done by the beginning of September. The goal is to get it done before the football season starts. The HVAC in this auditorium the work for that has been ongoing. It's coming along nicely and it should be up and running in the next couple of weeks. The middle school parking lot was just paved. Portion of the roof on the high school was recoated. And two of the bigger projects over the summer is the Robert Gordon and Sherman exteriors. The exterior of those buildings are going to be painted and cleaned up. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into the superintendent's report. Mr. Garrido.
Thank you, Mr. Harm. Good evening, everyone. Congratulations to our middle school students for the first year. They did outstanding, and we're very proud of them. It's just the beginning of our STEM program at the middle school, and to have all those students place as high as they did, it really, really is a reflection on the school, Ms. Goyce, and the staff at the middle school. So congratulations, everyone. The high school TSA team also entered in the state competition, did extraordinarily Great. We will be recognizing them at the next meeting in June. But I just want to highlight the students and their place. First place, architectural design. This is state level, and these students will compete at Dallas, Texas in the nationals at the end of June. I just want to make sure everyone knows that. The students that were involved in architectural design were Madison Gallo, Michael Martins, Alexandra Matias, Albina Nikovic, Madison Orcano, and Miranda Tavares. Again, first place, architectural design. We're very proud of them. In fashion, second place, the students that were involved were Natalia Negron, Logan Oberlius, Kaylee Rodriguez, Ekaterina Timura, Julia Tribbiano, Jacqueline Posadas, and Natalie Renhifo. In the digital video production, first place, Harnur Randawa, Rishab Ringra, Christopher Luciano, and Matthew Stark. And we do have one first place high tech high school and second in biotechnology. I just wanted to announce that that is Emily Tribbiano. So congratulations to all of our high school students. They did an amazing job. Amazing job. Okay, we didn't have a board meeting since April 26th. Last week was Staff Appreciation Week, and I want to congratulate all of our staff. Our Governor's Educators of the Year will be recognized at a breakfast on March 24th at Kane University. It's a wonderful, the Union County Roundtable, Superintendent Roundtable sponsors that, and it's a wonderful way to recognize the teachers. We will be recognizing them also on June 1st in our annual staff recognition dinner. And then at the June board meeting, I am going to invite them also to recognize them at the meeting. So our staff, our Governor's Educators of the Year will be properly recognized during that time. I just wanted to just turn our attention now. This week, there's testing, and actually for the next couple of weeks, though, the state learning assessments will be taking place. So I just want to make sure the parents, this is the first year in 2 years, obviously because of the COVID pandemic, they did not have it. This year is back on, is in person, and it will count for the district and obviously for the students. The end of year activities, please, I just would like to make sure that you turn your attention to the calendars in each individual school for end of the year activities. They're coming up very quickly. We're almost in mid-May. Before you know it is June 20th, which is the last day of school. There's a lot of activities that are happening, including middle school and high school graduations. So please make sure you tune into that. In terms of our health and phys ed curriculum, I know there's still some hesitation from the parents. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, we are in the process of writing that curriculum through our Director of Curriculum, Mr. Salvo, our administration, and our health and counselors, nurses, and health teachers. We will have information for you. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, we will make sure that parents get to see the curriculum. If they want to have input, you'll be able to. We will make sure we'll organize some type of communication with the community, with the parents, and also with the board. So more coming in at the June meeting for everyone. I just want to make sure everyone is aware. And the most important thing is we will have, and you will have, parents opt-out options to the curriculum and the standards that are in question from many of our parents. So I just wanted to touch on that. We're working on it. We'll make sure that the board and the community is tuned into what's going on. And with that, that is my presentation for the evening. Thank you, Mr. Harms.
Thank you, Mr. Garrido. At this time, we'll move into the agenda items. On to personnel, items 1 through 12. 1, staff appointments. 2, staff resignation. 3, district substitutes. 4, professional development preparation. 5, additional Title III ESL support program staff. 6, ESL summer enrichment program. 7, summer enrichment math and literacy program. 8, additional summer camp staff. 9, employment contract, school business administrator, board secretary. 10, maternity leave of absence request. 11, additional elementary proctors for 2021 to 2022. And 12, rescinding of staff appointments. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Colstrom,
Yes.
Paul Biamonte,
Yes.
Mark Fernandez,
Yes.
Dr. Kirkland,
Yes.
Michael Ann Regan,
Yes.
and President Harms.
Yes. Motion carries. Under education, agenda items 13 through 18. 13, education programs. 14, education trip request. 15, establish a special education program. 16, standard field trips. 17, conference attendance request. And 18, harassment, intimidation, bullying incidents. Do I have a motion?
Make the motion.
I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
President Harms, I have number 16, the standard field trips.
Mhm.
Is this something, this says 22, 23? These field trips already on a calendar or?
Yeah. These are field trips that annually are attended by the students, so they are approved prior to that. But these are all areas that have been visited in the previous years. If there are any field trips that are added, the board will be approving them individually.
So we don't necessarily know that they're going. This is just
We're
places that
approving.
they've been.
You're approving the blanket, yeah.
Got it.
Field trip.
Got it.
List.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Colstrom,
Yes.
Paul Biamonte, Mark Fernandez,
Yes.
Dr. Kirkland,
Yes.
Michael Ann Regan,
Yes.
President Harms.
Yes,
Motion carries.
move on to business. Agenda item through 31. 19, monthly certification. 20, approval of bills. 21, approval of minutes. 22, professional service contract 2022, 2023. 23, district contracts, agreements, and revisions. 24, business evacuation drills. 25, disposal of property. 26, 2022, 2023 food nutrition program contract. 27, 2022, 2023 school lunch prices. 28, use of buildings and grounds. 29, capital reserve. 30, maintenance reserve, and 31, comprehensive annual financial report. Do I have a motion?
I have a question first. May I have a motion to table 28A and B to a later time?
Do I have a second for that table 28?
Second.
Okay, do we roll call? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so on the next, I'll ask for someone to motion the previous ones excluding 28A and B.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the other ones? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Colstrom,
Yes.
Paul Biamonte. Yes. Mark Fernandez,
Yes.
Dr. Kirkland,
Yes.
Michael Ann Regan, President Harms.
Yes. We will move on to continuing business. Do we have any continuing business? Yeah. Mhm. Hearing none, We have two things under new business. So the first one is that our next meeting is June 7th, but that is the preliminary for primaries or whatever, for elections anyhow. And we have the school closed. So at this time, I would like to ask for a motion to move the meeting from June 7th to June 14th.
Make that motion.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so our next meeting is June 14th. At this time, before we get into our ethics training by Ms. Gwen Thornton from the New Jersey School Boards Association, I would ask that we'll go into public participation. Anyone wishing to speak on any item, please come forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, Katie McDermott, 730 Galloping Hill Road. Thank you for your time and dedication to the students of Roselle Park. I recently became friends with a parent of a child with disabilities in another town who sits on her Board of Education. Through my conversations with her, I've come to understand the time and commitment that it takes to be a member of the board. And I really want you guys to know how much I truly appreciate the service to our community. I also want to thank you for assigning a board liaison to the CPAG. It's wonderful to see the district take this positive step forward towards truly being inclusive. You can't discuss diversity and inclusion without talking about disability. I truly believe that by working together and with the leadership of Mrs. Cluffy, who has already made many positive changes, we as a district can become a model for other districts across the state in terms of special education. I also wanted to note that our next meeting is Thursday, the 19th at 6:30. It's going to be held virtually. And also I wanted to note my older son is going to be a member of the band next year, and I'm super excited about it. And nobody mentioned that there is a band car wash here at the high school on Saturday from 9 to 3, assuming that the weather holds out. So if you need your car washed, please come and get your car washed at the high school and support the band. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lucy Figueredo, 330 Chardon Avenue. So I would like to ask you a question. I know you brought up the health education program. I have 2 girls and they're not. So what you said was you can opt out. So when my children were in 5th grade in Sherman, they asked my child, they wanted to teach them different things about sexual education. I opted out. My daughter comes home and says, well, Mom, Suey Lulu came and told me this, this, and this. Why'd you opt me out? Did you think I was weird? I said, no, I didn't think you were weird. I just think it's inappropriate and it should be a parent's choice to tell a child. Now, a lot of you do not have kids. I understand that. I know you have 2 daughters, Paul. I know, Mark, you have 2 daughters, and I know you have 2 sons. As a parent in the school, I do not want my child to understand and 2nd grade how to masturbate. I do not want my child to understand how to play with himself, or is he going to go blind, or is a girl how she's going to feel. At a 2nd grade level, they should not. They're still innocent children. And to think that you're actually even thinking about it or even asking to opt out, let's be realistic, people. Kids are still going to talk. They're going to come and tell people. And then your child's going to ask you the same thing that my child asked me in 5th grade. Is she weird? My child wasn't weird. I think a parent should have the right to tell a child when they're ready, not at a 2nd grade. And it should not be New Jersey or Roselle Park's right to tell a child. And you're right, you can opt out. I did read into it and I did see the articles, but there's parents that are not going to opt out of it. And you don't think children talk? Absolutely, they do. I know growing up, my parents did not tell me anything. I had to learn it from my friends. And what I learned from my friends is if you kiss a boy, you might get pregnant, which is ridiculous. So I want to be realistic with my children and I want to talk to my children, but I think 2nd grade was a little harsh and I think it's too young. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen Jaskula, 145 West Grant. I just wanted to note something that might need correcting. The minutes from the last meeting that were approved, there's an incorrect information on them. It states that Angie Ortiz voted in the affirmative on the last two. She was not here both in March, at any of the meetings in March. So we might want to look at those. And I would have brought it up last week, but unfortunately, the minutes were not posted until after they were passed here and put on the website Wednesday or Thursday of the next week. So again, if you could make a motion to accept your minutes as corrected, that Angie was not here and she was not voting in the affirmative.
Angie Ortiz was here.
No. No.
No, she was.
Her,
Was she?
I'm sorry, I'll be on, I went back and checked the
No,
video.
I'm trying to, she's here, not here, so I kind of miss.
No, I
what meeting is-
understand, and I'm
yeah.
not trying to be, but it's
No,
just
no, I-
legally, you kind of have to have your minutes where they're reading the right thing.
Okay.
You know, I don't know. And again, the minutes aren't available that you passed tonight for anybody to look at. The April 26 meetings are not there and they're not on
Okay.
the website again. You know, it would solve a lot of issues if we just.
I'm
had it.
sorry, Mr. Scott, the April 26 meetings are being, they are being approved tonight?
They are
Yes,
approved. They're on
yes.
here
Yeah,
tonight,
they are, right.
but they're not anywhere available.
They're not supposed to be until after the approval of the board.
Okay.
They're not supposed to be.
So I'm going to ask, did the board have the meetings, the minutes from the meeting for the 26th before tonight?
No.
You get them. Yeah, yeah, they get them in the back. Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
again,
Yes.
I'm sorry, just look at March
What-
22nd.
We're trying to look at it, and we're not finding anything where,
No, she's talking about the.
March. Oh, two meetings ago.
oh, March. Well, because, yeah, all right, no, that's
I
fine.
thought you meant the April 26 meeting.
No,
Okay. Got it.
That got biased.
One
she Okay.
was not showing this, that she voted, but the other one she's showing that everybody voted it. So it's the last two meetings, March 22nd and March 8th.
We'll check it.
March 8th.
Checking if anything
I'm
has to
sorry, there
be,
was no meeting March 8th, though.
15th, we had one
15th.
March 15th.
There was one.
okay,
All right.
all right, all right.
Good
We'll,
morning.
we'll thank you for bringing that to our attention, and we will check it out, and if we have to do a remotion on the changing whatever, we'll
Yeah.
do whatever needs
Just
to be
make a
done.
motion to accept them as amended.
That's it.
That's all. I
But once
wanted
we
to-
investigate it, though. Got to do our due diligence.
I hope so.
We'll check it out. I'm not going to
Okay.
have anything discussion tonight on that.
No.
Thank you for your time. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close the public participation on the agenda. At this time, we are going to ask Ms. Gwen Thornton to come up. Is she here?
Yeah, she's here.
Oh, there you are. You're hiding.
I think Chris is.
You're hiding. And this is open to the public. This is on the ethics training by New Jersey School Boards Association. And Ms. Thornton is full of knowledge. Boy, I'm getting good, ain't I? I'm getting good. I'm getting good. No, she is. She's does a great job on the ethics training. So, audience, if you want to stay, that's fine. I do that to work every time, every shower, every time. Well, I told you this is, so. Hey, my start story?
Time to warm up.
Otherwise, I'll run to the,
It may take it a moment. Well, in the meantime, I will begin talking to you about ethics. You don't even have to turn around if you don't want to. Actually, New Jersey law and regulation does require that board members have an annual ethics training. It is part of New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum, which, as you know, was adopted in 2008-9, was revised in 2016-17. And the school board code of ethics, you are the largest group of publicly elected officials. Is this better?
If you want to walk around, I'm not sure.
Thank you. I probably will if the PowerPoint doesn't work. It is a requirement that you, as the largest group of volunteer public officials, at one point voluntarily, now it's in statute, but agreed to live by. I know I've said this to this board before, but I will say it again. I am waiting for our legislative brethren down the street from our headquarters in Trenton to adopt a code of ethics as well. It has not yet happened in my 25 years of involvement in education. So I'm very proud of our boards that they have agreed to abide by this and routinely follow it. And certainly it just speaks to the conduct of members to make sure that you hold the respect and the confidence of the people you serve and the students who benefit from your service. So it requires that you avoid conduct that could be a violation of the public trust or creates a justifiable impression, a perception among the public that such trust is being violated. No, this is not working. Why is this not working? Okay. So the provisions of this act not only apply to boards of education, but also to charter school boards of trustees. And of course, you know that is a requirement of CUSAC, but additionally, the law established the School Ethics Commission, outlines what are conflicts of interest, addresses your financial disclosure statements, and also incorporates the mandatory training requirements for Board of Education members across the state. For those of you, again, who may be new, in the first year of board service, you're required to attend new board member orientation and then attend training in years 2 and 3 of your first term, and in year 4 of any subsequent term, meaning every 4th year, 8th year, 12th year that you were elected. There we go. It has no signal now. Yeah. Oh, we're in business. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your help. So those are the training requirements. We offer them multiple times a year. As a result of COVID, we offer them both virtually as well as in a hybrid model, as well as in person. I hope that you've seen that this year in October, we are returning to workshop in person in Atlantic City. We're very excited about that. It is a wonderful set of opportunities for training. If you have never had an opportunity to attend because of COVID, I certainly would suggest, if you're able to do so, that you attend. Is it not moving? The School Ethics Commission itself is composed of 9 members. They're appointed by the governor. They serve a 3-year term. There are 5 citizens, 2 school board members, and 2 school administrators. No more than 5 may be from the same political party. The notion is that board members are run in a nonpartisan election, and that the School Ethics Commission should reflect the nonpartisan nature of board service. And so they are a nonpartisan body. They have the authority to issue 2 different kinds of opinions. One is an advisory opinion, and the other is adjudication of actual ethics complaints. So if you as a school official think you may have a conflict or there may be an item that's going to be coming up on your agenda that you should not participate in voting or any discussion around, then you can write to the SEC, the School Ethics Commission, they meet once a month, and ask for an advisory opinion. If the advisory opinion has such widespread application for board members across the state, they at times will make an advisory opinion public. They will remove any district names, board member names, the district name, and just make it a blanket advisory opinion. We publish all of those in school board notes in order to make you all aware if there has been a public advisory. Additionally, if someone files a complaint against a Board of Education member alleging a violation of the Code of Ethics, they will hear those incidences as they come up. The majority of them are not acted upon, but do keep in mind that any member of the public who lives in your community, or even a member of the public who does not live in your community, any faculty member, any person can file an ethics complaint against a Board of Education member. So at the end of the day, it becomes very important to make sure that you are operating within the framework of the Code of Ethics. Okay. The SEC has the power to recommend to the commissioner if you are found or adjudged to have violated the code, what that punishment will be. A reprimand, which is simply a rebuke by the commissioner. A censure is more formal. It's a letter that comes to the district. You are required to read it at an open public meeting and then post it in the district. A suspension is just what it says. We're all aware of what a suspension is. It's a time frame. It has a fixed beginning and an end. And they do have the authority to remove you permanently from the remainder of your term of office. The SEC makes the recommendation to the Commissioner of Education, who makes a final decision. If you wish to appeal the commissioner's decision on an ethics charge, you would go into the appellate division to make an appeal, either around the punishment and or around the complaint itself. Okay. This past year, there were 20 advisory opinions. 9 were recently made public. And we are still currently looking at those, although I do believe now they have been reviewed and talked about in school board notes. We generally put together this presentation in January for the new board year, because that's when most boards of education begin thinking about doing their ethics presentation. And I will tell you that when we did this initially, the SEC had not yet updated their website. So we didn't have access to the accurate numbers until much later in February. In terms of mandatory training, they removed 7 members for failure to attend within the year of their service. They suspended 5 for 30 days, and they reprimanded 18. You can see there what they did for people who failed to file their financial disclosure forms, which, as you know, I'm sure you just all finished those. They were due by April 30th. And again, they have removed people for that as well. This past year, there were 29 ethics complaints filed against board member. Of those, 21 were dismissed, 2 were settled by the parties without having to be adjudicated by the Ethics Commission, and 6 cases were recommended to the commissioner, and I will talk about those cases in a few minutes. Okay. Here was one of the 8 public advisory opinions, had to do with a board member who owns and operates an accounting firm, and some of the district's employees apparently were clients of that firm. So he asked for an advisory as to what he needed to do in that regard as a potential conflict. The SEC said that he had to recuse himself from participating in anything that had to do with the professional services he was providing, if it was for an employee and or their families, in order to keep that public perception and maintain the trust. So again, you know, there are requirements around the Code of Ethics, but also then around conflicts. Okay. And here are the actual pieces to the code. You're required to uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the state board, court orders. I'm sure you're aware of this and all of the dust up that has been around for the last 2 years around executive orders from the governor for health and safety reasons. Some people were very unhappy about some of those pieces and wanted them, districts to not necessarily follow them. But as a Board of Education, you are required by law to uphold those executive orders, whether you agree with them or not. Going back several years, those of you who've been on the board a while might have remembered the park assessments. When they were implemented, there were a number of districts that did not want to administer the parks, particularly board members who didn't feel that they were a good assessment. And so they wanted to not give those tests. But again, because it was part of this, an order from the state Board of Education, it had the force of law. And so boards are required to do that. You must follow the law. People right now, as this lovely parent talked about, the New Jersey student learning standards. Again, you are required to make sure that your curriculum is aligned to the New Jersey student learning standards. You have no choice in that particular domain. You're required to make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of all children and make sure you're meeting the needs of all students in your community. You're required to confine your board making, your board actions, policy making, planning, and appraisal, and frame policies and plans only after the board has been consulted by those who will be affected by them. Oftentimes, that information comes through surveys. It may come through administrative reports and presentations. It doesn't mean that you have to meet with folks on every single policy that you create, but certainly you need to make sure that you are getting that kind of input to know how it will affect those who are in your district. You're again responsible for making sure that the schools are well run, but you are not the ones running the day-to-day administration of the district. You provide oversight, develop policy, are responsible and accountable for the fiscal efficiency of the district ultimately, but it is not your responsibility to run the day-to-day operations of the district. You also are required to recognize that it is the full Board of Education that has authority when you are sitting at a duly advertised meeting of the board, as you were here tonight, when you were approving those various pieces that you approved, but individually recognizing that you have no authority away from the board table. So you never want to make any promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board. And that's an important piece. Refusing to surrender your judgment to special interests or partisan political groups, or to use the schools for personal gain or the gain of your family or friends is not permissible either. Again, you're required to hold confidential all matters that are done in executive session that could needlessly injure parties within the school, whether it's students or staff or others, and making sure that together with your fellow board members, you are communicating with the staff your aspirations for the schools. You're required to vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer, your superintendent. Boards of education may not employ anyone without an affirmative recommendation of the superintendent, and that's important as well. You're required to support and protect school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. Before you were a Board of Education member, you might have been able to stand on the sidelines at a soccer game and complain about a coach. The minute you became a board meeting member, you lost that ability. You must support all school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. You're also required to refer all complaints to your superintendent and act on complaints at public meetings only after the failure of an administrative solution. You are the court of last resort. So all other complaints should be directed to the appropriate personnel within your school district and notify your superintendent of the problem. Okay. So here are a commissioner decision that occurred during 2021. A board member distributed flyers urging a vote for a particular political party. He also commented on the opposition leader being from a radical group. And the board member used his title on the flyer without a disclaimer saying that he was speaking only as an individual and not for the Board of Education. Was this a violation? Absolutely, okay. He took private action that could have the potential to compromise the board, as it could appear to the community, absent that disclaimer, that the board was supporting one political group over another political group in the town. It goes to not surrendering his individual judgment to a special interest or partisan political groups, and making sure that they're conveying accurate information. This board member was censured for his behavior. Lauren.
Well, in this particular figure, kind of word. So what they're saying here is that board member putting his or her name on a flyer for a particular candidate, right?
Right? Absent a disclaimer indicating
right.
that he was speaking solely for himself, not as a member and not of the Roselle Board of Education, and not representative of the will of the board.
Okay, so if I'm sitting outside at a street fair, thank you. We think of street fair, and I'm on the board of it, and I sit there and I'm asking people to sign a petition or to register or any type of that thing. Is that unethical?
Registering to vote is a nonpartisan activity, and it's not taking any personal or private action that would compromise the board. And in fact, there are, and your attorney can weigh in on this, but I do believe that there is a piece to the educational code now that requires districts to encourage 18-year-olds to register to vote. So I don't see that particular example as being problematic. However, if you were at that street fair and handing out partisan campaign literature for an individual, that would be a horse of a different color.
Okay, so let's say we're not handling it, we're not handing it out, but this might sound stupid, but I want to get it clear in my head. I'm sitting at a table and there's literature there for X, Y, and Z. Is that considered part of, because, guilt by association?
Well, again, go back to the law that says the justifiable impression could be, and we can't be responsible for how people perceive our behavior, right? So if you're sitting at a table where there's clearly partisan political activity, flyers, information, buttons, whatever, it could be perceived by the public that you were in some way endorsing this particular individual or group of individuals running for office. When you were a board member, you were always a board member. Even if you're not sitting here, your public knows that, and they impute to you greater knowledge and information than other folks would have access to. And unless you're going to say to every single person, hi, I'm Lauren Harms, I'm here, I'm a member of the board of Roselle, I'm the president, but I'm just here to talk to you as a citizen. You'd have to do that. It might be very hard to prove. I would say just because you might be able to do it doesn't mean you should. And again, it goes to avoiding any perception of overstepping those bounds.
But and with that said, that helped me there. With that said, perception is board members can't control what people have the perception of what you're doing. So what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's really nothing wrong with that. But you really shouldn't do it because the perception of what people might have.
Well, and the Ethics Commission has held incidences where it is the perception that creates the conflict or the potential violation, not just actual behavior.
Let's be clear about something. If there are two tables at an event, one clearly has Republican representation and one clearly has Democratic.
You should sit in the middle. I mean, I'm being flippant, but again, avoiding that public perception that there could be partisan influence on a Board of Education is something that should be assiduously avoided. And so I know it's a limitation around the First Amendment. I hear that oftentimes from brand new board members who say, my freedom of speech. And my response is, yes, you do, but it is limited by and framed by the Code of Ethics. And so it's a balance between your right as an individual citizen, because we all are, and the constraints of the Code of Ethics. There was an incident, a case, a potential violation. A board member at a public meeting threatened a coach's job and had done so in the previous year as well. And this was at a public meeting. Is that a problem? Absolutely. This was one that was settled because they came to an agreement and he was suspended for 3 months and agreed to that without it really going full blast through the DOJ, Department of Education. I mean, again, failure to support school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. Even if you don't like your child's coach in the district, you have to live with it. Okay? A board member voted to approve the superintendent's merit goals, which are contractual. They're in the superintendent's contract. The member's daughter was a tenured teacher in the district at the time the member participated in the vote. Violation? Absolutely. Okay, if you have a family member employed in the district, okay, so it's not moving. Is it not? There we go. Thank you. You cannot use your position as a board member. It could be seen as perceived as using your board seat to get an advantage for your immediate family member, okay? Because the superintendent has to recommend employment or reemployment and renewal of a teacher. So again, if you have a family member involved in this, employed in your school district, you are conflicted out of participating in terms and conditions of employment of the superintendent. You cannot participate in the superintendent's evaluation, and you are prohibited from participating in a search for a new superintendent if the seat were going to become vacant. Okay, you would not be able to participate at all. A board member voted to approve the use of district's facilities to an organization from which he derived income. Very clearly that too, again, you cannot have any direct or indirect financial involvement that might reasonably be expected to impair your objectivity or independence. Okay, and if somebody's paying you, you're likely to do something that would be favorable to them. And that's the notion there, okay? A board member wrote an op-ed endorsing a candidate for the Board of Education. He included a disclaimer, but the op-ed included multiple references to his position on the board and discussion and comments on board matters. So not only was it a violation, okay, but the SEC held that it is not solely the presence of a disclaimer that will protect you, rather it is the content of your message. And because throughout this op-ed, he included multiple references to his board seat and sitting as a board member, but also commented on discussions and other board matters. So while he had the disclaimer that said this was just his personal opinion and not reflective of the board, what he incorporated obviated that disclaimer. So that's something you need to keep in mind, that even if you include a disclaimer, it depends on the content of your message. And that is important, especially when one considers the number of folks who are not necessarily writing op-eds anymore, but posting on Facebook or Twitter or other kinds of social media. A board member on his Facebook page made anti-Muslim, racist, incendiary, and offensive comments. Clearly, that was out of order. He was censured. By the time this case made its way through, his board service had expired. In this particular instance, the governor had asked him to resign. The board had asked him to resign. Multiple groups within the state of New Jersey had asked this individual to resign. But there's nothing that forces you to resign your seat as a member of the Board of Education when you have not been found to have violated the law. Okay? So the SEC has been dealing with so many incidences on social media that they have finally, not finally, it took them a little while, but they have now issued exactly what the disclaimer must say. And so this is the actual language, and it's in the packet, so you'll have it. That the following statements are made in my capacity as a private citizen, not in my capacity as a board member. They're not representative of the board or its individual members, and solely represent my personal opinion. So again, if you remember nothing else that I say tonight, I think this is the most important piece for you to remember, that it is not just a disclaimer, but it is the content of what it is you say, whether, you know, the words will dictate and render your disclaimer meaningless. So that's an important piece, because I have board members say, well, I'll go on and write whatever I want. I'll just write the disclaimer. And I said, go ahead, but do so at your risk. Okay? And I particularly like this because I think it is so powerful. Public words which derogate from the mission of a Board of Ed serve no purpose, create unnecessary hostility and animosity within a community, and ultimately have the greatest detrimental impact on the very people that the respondent is tasked to serve, the students. Although the commission acknowledges the sanctity of the First Amendment, words that deliberately cause divisiveness should have no place in the educational setting. I'm sure you're aware that these are very contentious times, especially for Board of Education members. You've never been more popular and more visible, or more unpopular and more visible. But I think this is incredibly important here. And that is that it's so important to work through your issues at the board table, and to do so with respect and kindness toward one another, and know that the entire premise of a Board of Education is that greater wisdom comes out of 9 different voices and perspectives than from one, and that you can debate any issue at the table, but you leave the issues at the table. You are not debating people. And I just think that we've gotten away from civility and respect for one another. And I think it's shown up in the School Ethics Commission by the number of cases they are adjudicating. And many of them are on social media. And they are paying great attention to what is going on. And I think this just says it so well, that, you know, words that cause divisiveness have no place in an educational setting that impacts kids. Okay? So it doesn't matter what the medium of the opinion is expressed, the rules are the same. Use the disclaimer. Make sure that your speech, whether it's written or posted, meets the requirements of the code, and ask whether you're deliberately causing divisiveness or derogating from the mission of your Board of Education, which is focused around providing opportunities for all students to reach his or her potential. Okay? There are some questions around, we've already talked about this, approving the hiring of an auditing firm that you work for. Can you participate in the vote? Absolutely not. It's going to be a conflict. You are going to be seen as benefiting more than anyone else benefits. Okay? So recuse yourself if there's a benefit to you or a family member around a business interest, such as the one we just saw. Use of your position to secure unwarranted privileges or advantages or employment. Again, that is the broader definition of relative. This now includes aunts, uncles, in-laws, cousins, half-brothers, half-sisters, stepsisters, stepbrothers. Almost any relative that you can imagine is included in the definition. So avoid financial involvements. Certainly taking any gift or favor that is offered with an intent to influence is something that is a perceived conflict. Personal involvement that creates a benefit that is better for you than for another member of the public. I'm often asked whether I can vote as a board member on approving a child's, my child's fifth grade field trip to wherever. Yes, you can, because every other fifth grader has that same option to go on the field trip. The benefit for my child is no more or less than every other child that's in fifth grade or sixth grade or any field trip, okay? Taking any service or employment that might prejudice or holding service or employment that might prejudice your independent judgment, no discussion, no voting on those items, okay? Again, the accountability regulation includes spouses, and I just was talking about this, civil union, domestic partners, child, stepchild, son, daughter-in-law, siblings, half siblings, parents, step-parents, grandparents, grandchildren, aunts, uncles, nieces, and nephews, and a partridge in a pear tree. This is a really broad base. There's also a category that's called other. And we have found in certain instances that there is a problem with another. For example, there was a particular case where a superintendent had an ongoing relationship with a staff member who was residing with him. That person is not related by marriage. They hadn't been together long enough for a civil union, but the school ethics commission held them to be an other, meaning they were impacted, okay? The district has an opening for LDTC. It would be a perfect job for your nephew who lives 2 towns away. Can you hire that nephew? No, you cannot, because you have a nepotism policy. The board is meeting to discuss the superintendent's performance. Your district is a substitute in this district. Can you participate? No, you cannot. Any employment by a family member in this district in any capacity, from summer worker to substitute to cafeteria worker to teacher to principal, conflicts you out. It doesn't matter where they are or what school they're in, you are out of participating. I've actually had board members say, well, I'll have my child substitute somewhere else. I said, that's fine. You can do that. That's probably a good idea. Then it's never a problem. Okay. Again, we've already talked about this. If you have a relative in the district already, you can't hire another relative of a board member or a chief school administrator. He cannot recommend that a family member of a board member be hired or a chief school administrator. If you have a family member employed in the district prior to you becoming a board member, that person is grandfathered. We're not suggesting they're no longer employable, but there was an advisory opinion where a superintendent who was not superintendent in the district at the time the person was hired, she was hired as a lunch aide, and the principal of one of his buildings wanted to promote the person to a secretarial position. So the superintendent sought an advisory opinion, asking if that was possible. And they said, no, we're really sorry, but so sorry, Charlie, your sister-in-law cannot be promoted to a secretary as long as you're employed as superintendent in the district. You can't recommend her. So that's an important piece. The board is voting to approve the MOA with the Local Education Association. You are a teacher in another district. Can you participate in the vote? Actually, you can, as long as you do not have heightened union affiliation, which means you can vote as long as all the salary guides are done and the total package has been costed out and you're a teacher in another district, you can in fact vote on the final MOA. You may not want to. It may be a perception piece for you as a teacher in another district, and there are enough votes on the board to approve the MOA. You don't have to vote if you're concerned that everyone knows you're a teacher and it might be perceived that somehow that's a conflict. It's not a legal conflict, but again, sometimes there are things that you can do that maybe you shouldn't do because it could be perceived incorrectly, okay? So if you have a spouse, a dependent child, or a child who's not a dependent or a relative who works in this district, you may not participate in negotiations, you may not vote on the contract. If it's you, your spouse, or your dependent child who works out of the district, you can't participate in negotiations. You may, however, vote on the contract absent another conflict. And that other conflict would be heightened union activity. The SEC has defined that as meaning You are the building rep in your district where you work. You are a member of the negotiations team in the district where you work, or you're an officer of the association in the district where you work. They consider that heightened union activity, which would conflict you out of voting. If you have a child who's not dependent, or a relative who works out of district, you can participate in negotiations and you can vote to ratify the contract, again, absent either your child who's not a dependent or your relative having heightened union activity, okay? And those would be the same heightened activities I just outlined. If you have questions about this, the best person to get a final answer from is your lovely board attorney. And we always suggest that that's who you turn to. These are general statements. These, of course, are subject to change, folks, because they have changed over time, okay? One of the pieces I wanted to point out here, and this is one that changed over time, endorsement of a candidate by your local education association here in Roselle Park does not create an automatic, a per se, future conflict unless a financial contribution is given and intended to influence the member. When I was on the Board of Education, the SEC had held that if you were endorsed by the local Teachers Association, you could not participate in negotiations for a full year. It was an automatic, you were conflicted out. That has changed, okay? Here, you would be conflicted out if you took a financial contribution that was given and intended to influence you, which technically you couldn't take, right? Because that too would be a violation. So it's an interesting interpretation that they have arrived at, okay? The doctrine of necessity, really, I'm not going to spend any time on this. It is something that is available in case, and we do have some boards where we have a majority of the board members conflicted out of participation in being able to negotiate or do a superintendent search or negotiate a superintendent contract, and which time you could adopt the doctrine of necessity that would allow you all to fully participate, okay? Volunteerism. Again, you know, this is not something that existed when I was on my Board of Education, but the SEC has stated that board members must refrain from certain activities, again, based on the degree of involvement with students and staff, and the degree to which the board member has authority to give or receive directions to or from students and or staff. So here's what we recommend. You should never, ever, ever be giving direction to students and or staff, period, as a board member. Forget this code of ethics. That's beyond your role. That is not your role. So you can volunteer. You just don't want to be enmeshed in the building. You should not be in your school buildings every day unless you have a specific volunteer activity, any kind of one-day volunteer activity, volunteer for field day. Sell hot dogs at the concession stand at a football game. You could collect tickets at a football game. Read across America, or read to the kindergartners or any other class. You are also allowed to chaperone a field trip. That's a one-time event. All of those are fine, but we would strongly suggest you not be enmeshed or such a visible presence in the school buildings that the staff begins to believe you are part of the building. And I know that's an overstatement, but I think you need to know that that is an important constraint around what you can do, okay? Now, if you have children in the schools, no one's telling you not to go to your teacher conferences, no one's telling you not to go to the science fairs, any kind of public open events in your district. I always encourage all board members to attend. I think it's wonderful for the public to see you visible and present. So anything that is open public, any sporting event, all of those things, we certainly encourage all board members to attend as your schedule allows. And if you can be there, that's fine. If you can't, that's okay too. But that is a limitation around it. So we've sort of given you a little script that you can read in your head and think about. And if you can answer no to all of these questions, then the volunteer activity is most likely okay. This does not prevent you from being a volunteer coach for Park and Recs. or Pop Warner or Roselle Park Soccer or whatever local athletic associations, groups you may have, or Girl Scouts, PTO, the Park and Recs, any of that. Even if you have an Ed Foundation, since it has its own bylaws, you certainly can participate in that as well. But again, if you have questions, certainly talk to Pedro and check with your board attorney for clearance, just so you don't overstep by accident. Yes, sir.
Can you talk about handling school districts money?
Yes, I would avoid handling school district funds as a board member, volunteer.
That would be what?
I used to run the school store at my daughter's elementary school. We collect nickels and dimes, literally nickels and dimes. I never thought anything of it, but now it would be a problem. Okay. Again, I don't think it's a problem that's insurmountable. I just don't think you want to be handling large sums of money. My daughter was a forensic, we ran a forensic tournament. She was a debater. We used to go to Costco and buy several $100s worth of food, bring it back to the district, and then serve the debaters who were there for a tournament all day. It was a fundraiser. They'd buy sandwiches, we'd buy juice and soda. We used to collect hundreds of dollars, right? And we put out our own money and then build the district. I did that as a board member because I was a parent, not because I was a board member. I would avoid that today, okay? Again, because you're handling district money and it's just always. What about PTAs and PTOs? There is a separate ethics decision that says you can be an officer and you can participate. If I were a board member, I still would not want to be treasurer. But again, I always urge caution on the side of extremism, and I will be the first one to say I'm overly cautious. But my goal is to protect all of you from any kind of possible blowback. Okay. Interviews committees. Again, here's another one of these pieces where the Ethics Commission is sort of all over the map. They decided that 1 or 2 board members, with the recommendation of the superintendent, can observe interviews, but only 2 members and only with the superintendent's recommendation and only for high-level administrative positions, not for teachers, not for coaches, only for high-level administrative positions. And then they turned around and issued another one that said, board member involvement in interviews other than superintendent are not encouraged. So, this is one of these ones, they have allowed very narrow circumstances that requires the approval of the superintendent, and those guidelines must be followed. Observations and assessments, not questioning, not conversations with candidates. Again, only high-level administrative positions. On the flip side, again, and this is an older one, A1510, you can't participate in exit interviews. So it seems a little bit of a contradiction in terms to say you can sit in on some administrative interviews, but you can't sit in on an exit interview for a high-level administrator. So there's a little bit of inconsistency here, but again, you need to know what that inconsistency is. So just, in closing, we recommend that if you think you have conflicts, make a list, review it regularly, because sometimes those things change. Again, consulting with your board attorney, and identifying any potential conflicts ahead of time, and continuing to look at school board notes just to keep advised and abreast of all the newly released advisory opinions, because we print those routinely so that you will be aware of them. Because there's an expectation by the SEC that when they make an advisory opinion, that you will abide by the pieces contained in that. And you can't say, whoops, I didn't read it, I didn't know. Ignorance is no excuse for violation, okay? So just always remembering to protect the public trust, honoring your obligation to serve the interests of the public and the board, and reevaluate those potential existence of conflicts to make sure you steer clear of those is the important piece, okay? I've given you a packet. It includes all of the links to these sites in case you want to read any of these particular cases. They are interesting to read in some circumstances, but again, it is certainly up to you. There's also on the right-hand side in the packet, there should be an acknowledgement of receipt of the code of ethics that you may want to sign and date and give to your business administrator. So if it comes up under CUSAC, there is proof that you have attended your training. Questions? I'm getting faster, Lauren. No, bless you.
Good question. If there's, I know this is required for you to do.
I know. Wonderful opportunity to see you. Allow me to get that for you. No. I just blaming you. Says, boy, he can't do that.
If, I know this is required. What if board members that aren't here? Yeah, it's always, and yes, please, I need 2, 3.
My favorite example that I learned from you a couple of years ago about social media, and I know people use the First Amendment thought, but when you state something on your Facebook page or whatever social media platform you use, even though you are an individual, you are perceived as being the board. So when you make comments, positive or negative, or mostly negative, it's not good. So it's best just to stay off of social media.
That would be my question.
And Gwen, you also, over here, sorry, you talked about in the past about social media, staying off public forums, especially. Forget about having a page yourself, but staying off the town forums. And
Those Facebook pages, particular risk, because you don't know who else is on there. And if everyone, the rest of you is on there, now you're connected to business outside of the open public, right? So that's a potential issue that as well. So I think it's just staying off of the, it just turns into a contest. That while she created a closed Facebook page for her campaign, after she was elected, she shut it down as a campaign Facebook page, and she was administrating the page. So her claim was she never posted after she was elected, even though she was administrating the page, and the election commission said. It's just doesn't seem to be a lot of consistency. I true, she created
content of the page, but not necessarily posting yourself. Like a post that. Like that post that post is yours.
Thing I noticed on the PowerPoint, a lot of the what do you call it? Some of the ethics that people did, and the only thing they got out of it for punishment was reprimand. Now, to me, a reprimand on some of them. Yeah, and so I do it, oops, okay, I go like this, but I still accomplished what I wanted to do. So if somebody wanted to do it. Yeah, and it doesn't, I mean.
So all of the professional associations have made comments. So we too, as an association, on behalf of our board members, made some suggestions that we could do better outcomes. Clear and more concise and less pushy. And properly consistent. Again, you know, we're not trying to write those. Yes, and have it. We are well aware of that. And we are incredibly aware. Just like I told you.
Reprimand, yeah, right there.
Want to do it?
Okay.
Okay. Not exactly like that too, but it's a human one, people will have times about that. Yes, I understand that. And my goal is to have you guys follow it. And we should go to the market, not this time. That we just-
Again, on behalf of the board, I thank you for coming. Thank you for all the information that you've given us, and I sure do.
Take care.
Thank you, thank you.
Graduation. We'll be able to do it in person again. Oh, so good.
Yeah, there you go, thank you.
All right.
If there's nothing else that we have on
Thank
the agenda, at this point here, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good
Anyone
night.
opposed? Aye. It's passed. Have a good night, everyone. June 14th is our next meeting. See you all there.